Have you been dealing with worm trails or snake trails, as they're sometimes known, in your flux core welds? And no matter what you try, you can't seem to solve that problem? Well, this video is for you, and I'm going to offer the solution right up front because I know when I'm going on YouTube to try to find an answer, to a question, I don't like sifting through giant YouTube intros. So the problem is almost certainly that your wire has absorbed moisture from the air due to improper storage methods. So please feel free to stop the video now and go rectify that situation by either, I would recommend just getting new wire because I don't really know of a way to bake the moisture out of that wire, the old wire, without melting the plastic of the spool. So please feel free to continue watching. I've got some cool arc shots and other little tidbits coming up. Whichever method you choose, make sure you adopt good, sound wire storage methods. My method is to put my wire in an airtight plastic container with a lid on it. So here I'm working with the same wire that's been the cause of my worm trail heartache, my heartworms, if you will, because I wanted to show that here so that when I change my wire to the new stuff, you can see the immediate difference. I've been dealing with this off and on for several projects at home, but they were all my own projects and not a customer's. So other than it being a highly annoying visible discontinuity in an otherwise fine weld, it wasn't a deal breaker. I know surface discontinuities like this would have zero chance of passing through quality control where I work. So if this were happening in that context, I would have no choice but to figure it out. I do think it's a problem worth solving though, even if you're not in that context. If your car started mooing like a cow every time the engine was running, you probably wouldn't be like, if I didn't know any better, I'd guess there's a dairy cow stuck in the air intake. But the car still runs fine, so I guess I'm good. I don't want to hear any comments about how this is a flawed analogy. It's a perfect analogy in every way, and you know it. Yep. This may not be considered a defect, depending on what your procedure says, but it sure is ugly. And I don't want ugly if I can avoid it. If I'm going to have ugly, let it be because of technique, not my equipment. It is possible to have worm trails for reasons other than moisture, but the reason I'm focusing on this solution pretty much exclusively is that I would venture to say 95% of the time moisture is the issue. With this final bead, I'm technically watching both toes, but I'm paying a lot more attention to that bottom toe. I find that if you watch the bottom and let it settle where it's supposed to, the top kind of takes care of itself. I'll talk about that a little more in a minute. Reveal. Let's see what we got here. Well, there's an ugly one at the beginning. Right there. They just pop up randomly. You never know when you're going to get them, and that's a very frustrating thing. So let's put the dry wire on there and see what happens. My particular wire feeder is external, and up until now I've just had my wire sitting out there in the breeze, absorbing every bit of moisture the air can give it. So the wonder of it is that I've only recently started experiencing these issues. All right, moment of truth. Got fresh wire on there that's not wet, I hope. Let's see if we get some worm trails. Effectively stacking beads is a necessary skill in my industry, which is building aircraft carriers. Oftentimes the weld size could be 5/8 inch or more, which might consist of a root in and 2 beads over that, and then another layer of 3, another layer of 4, and sometimes even one more layer of 5 beads. Now that's a lot of weld, and it's important to know what you're watching for in order to get the toes to wet in nicely. Otherwise things can get out of control pretty quickly. Here I'm watching that bottom toe like a hawk through the entire weld, making sure that my travel speed is such that the toe of the bead I'm laying down wets in just on top of the crest of the bead directly below it.
Any more than that, and I'll have ugly overlap, and any less than that, and I'll have underfill. That's at least partially what is meant by the admonition from your teacher. Watch the puddle. Watching the puddle and how it interacts with the bead beneath it means predictable results, as opposed to you lifting up your shield at the termination of your weld and being completely horrified by what you see. Who welded this? You say indignantly, just in case anybody happens to walk in right at that moment and see the nonsense you just put down. Not that I've ever done that. Don't be ridiculous.
Well, no more worms for this guy, I'm happy to report. If you'd like to read more about the issue and possibly discover some other foundational causes that aren't related to moisture, there's a great article that I would highly recommend by a guy with the fantastically appropriate name of Guy. I'll link to that in the description. In the meantime, I appreciate you watching the video. Please leave a comment if you've got some other feedback. If you've had some issues that weren't related to moisture and you solved them in another way, I'd be very interested to hear about it. I'll see you in the next video, and thanks again for watching.